Ladies and gentlemen, you are listening to the Pranzata Podcast. This is your host, Andrea Pranzatelli. This is episode number 109 on the Pranzata Podcast. Before we get into it, if you are new to this channel, this is a podcast where I typically interview musicians, stand-up comedians, and other types of people, artists, entrepreneurs, a doctor coming next week from the Philly, New York, and New Jersey area. Today's episode, we have Matt Koerner. Matt Koerner is a musician. He is the lead singer, songwriter, and creator of the pop-punk band Feeny from New Jersey and Philadelphia. He also happens to be a historian who specializes in American 20th century history. I have a lot of questions for him today, a little bit of a mix of history and music questions, a couple of philosophical questions, and just random questions that have nothing to do with music or history. So we are going to get right into it. So we're going to start the episode not with the history questions, but we're going to just kind of carry on a conversation we were having before we hit record. So we were talking about aging and when I first started turning 30, when I became 30, I was afraid that I was going to be old. And now I had a complete mind shift where I feel like 30s is young again. So you told me you had something to tell me about that, like some opinions about that.
Yes, well, I too am now old. I mean 30.
Old? Are you actually 30? Like that's exactly what you are?
I'm exactly 30. For another 2 months, I will be 30.
Nice.
It's kind of funny how we do that. We talk in years because I guess you're 30 years old for just your birthday.
Yeah.
But then the next, like, I've been 30 for 10 months. I'm closer to 31 now than I am. It's just something weird. But, I'm 30 in, like, real life. But in the city, I feel like I'm, 24. And I think if I was in the suburbs, I'd be, like, 42.
What makes you say that?
I think that the cities keep you younger.
That's what I was just thinking. For some reason, I had this, like, whole thing where I turned 30 and I thought my life was over. I'm like, okay, I might as well be an old lady now. Like, I'm not married. I don't have kids. I'm 30. I fucked up. But in the city, exactly what you said. I feel younger and I don't even know why I feel younger. One of my guests was saying, his name is Vahe, he's a guitar player. He was saying that he feels like being in a city because you have more of a vigilance about you, like there's potential danger, it just keeps your mind sharper and you have to walk around and get places, and somehow that he feels that it kept him younger when he was living in Philadelphia, and then when he moved to the suburbs he kind of got lazy. So I don't know if that has something to do with it.
No, that's interesting. I 100% subscribe to that theory, and but I've mostly thought of it in terms of like grandparents. Like I have grandparents who live in the suburbs and grandparents who live in the city. New York, though, in that case. And I feel as though elderly people in general who live in the city are a bit more robust because they're constantly walking. Yeah. They're interacting with people, so they're using your mind more. Yeah. I think that it does keep you more mentally agile, yes, and perhaps physically agile, just using your body and moving as opposed to, and I'm pretty anti-suburb at this point, to be honest.
Yeah, you are very anti-suburb. Why?
Yeah, I think they suck. I think I don't like cars. I'm very anti-car now too.
He was, by the way, I had an episode where I was like, one of my friends was actually jealous that my car got stolen. This is the friend I was talking about. I was like, he needs to come on the podcast soon. But explain to the listeners like why.
Cars are horrible, and I think they destroyed this country in a lot of ways. I like trains, and I don't like traffic. I hate commuting. I think that cars keep you less mobile. You like here I can walk and go anywhere. That's good for my physical and mental health. Physical I don't think is in question, but mental, I'm constantly bumping into people, I'm interacting, and that keeps us closer. The idea of community is, I think, what I love most about the city.
I would say I agree with that.
I know my mailman. I know all my neighbors. I like about most of my neighbors too, actually, at this point. Yeah. I walked to my friend's house. It's just like when I was in elementary school.
You walked here. Yeah, you walked.
I walked here. Yeah, exactly.
What now? Going back to what you said, what do you mean that cars have you believe they destroyed our country? What do you mean by that?
I think I'm speaking in extreme terms, and I'm probably going to regret saying that, actually.
No, it's okay.
I do believe that they just... Actually, no. I don't think I spoke in extreme terms enough. I'm going to actually revise that. No. Cars did not just destroy America. They destroyed the planet.
Okay.
Yeah, like from a global warming standpoint.
Okay, like gas.
They emit so much CO2, that just greenhouse gases that warmed, the planet through the atmosphere and created this warming thing that has ultimately, melted the polar caps, led to more flooding, all the things that people associate with global warming and climate change. That is chiefly the car's responsibility, all of the CO2 that gets pumped into there. It was done for profit. Now, it also, however, when the highway system was built, when the highway system was built, there's this guy Robert Moses is the guy that people point the finger at a lot, but the Eisenhower interstate system, it predominantly ripped up communities of color here in Philadelphia, as well as in New York and pretty much every other city. That's where they built the highway. So, I mean, they used eminent domain to take over people's houses and then bulldozed them. And those people had to live somewhere. Where'd they go? They had to just go to other areas. It was terrible. But it did cut communities, just like the community we live in right now. 95 is like I live under 95. There were houses
now,
there.
To play devil's advocate a little bit, I actually mostly agree with you, but I'm the type of person who I have a hard time making my mind on almost anything because I think of all the other things. I agree with most of what you said, but what about the things that we love and we're allowed to do because of vehicles? Like, for example, we're gigging musicians. Yes. Would any of this lifestyle be possible? Or even getting gear? Like, where and how would we buy gear? How would we buy groceries? How would we buy the things we like to buy? Can you imagine a world of being a touring musician if there was no vehicles?
Yes. Yes,
okay.
I can. I've given this a lot of thought. Okay. So there's a really good movie I saw that had, I think it was Queen Latifah, and I can't remember who she played in the movie now, but she was the main star of the movie. And it was about a jazz singer in the 1920s and 30s, and they used trains to get around to gigs. So
do you think if we didn't have cars, gigs would be mostly like a localized type of thing?
No.
Like it would be mostly like, hey, we all gig in this city.
No, she was from the South, and she played Paris, London. Like, she went all over the world. I think we would still fly places. I think we would still...
Right.
So I don't think it's like we should get rid of all cars.
Have less.
I don't think it should be a ubiquitous thing, and I think it keeps people poor. Cars are so expensive.
Yeah.
No, I'm just not about cars. But really, the community thing is a huge thing. Like, because I live in the city, again, I interact with all my neighbors.
Yeah.
The suburbs are so isolating. You're just out there by yourself.
Yeah.
Some people are probably saying, "No, I'm not. I that's fine if you're not." But in my experience, I felt pretty isolated. I mean, I felt like I had to drive about 15, 20 minutes to get anywhere.
Yeah.
I think that they're definitely bad for the planet. That's a given fact. But then our cities just weren't really designed for them. And then half of them have been bulldozed, and I just don't like the idea of being so spread out. I don't know, I could really rant about this a lot if you want me to.
No, I'm like super interested in it.
All right, I mean, I have a lot of other issues with the suburbs. I mean, I think the lawns are horrible. The whole concept of having grass, which is usually not native to that area that the grass is growing in.
Yeah.
I think a lot of the American grass is grown somewhere in originally from England, is I think what I've read, and.
Why do people have grass? Is it just like a looks thing?
Well, yes, it's 100% cosmetic. They could be vegetable gardens or nothing. They could just be nature do its thing.
Yeah.
Whatever it would have been. Grasses, and it's illegal in a lot of communities to not have a lawn. Yeah, lawn care is a huge thing. Do you know why?
Like what?
It's aesthetically pleasing.
Like they want to keep the status of the neighborhood high so that it has a better reputation, so people will buy houses.
Precisely.
That's crazy. I did learn that pretty recently. Like I think last year I was like, wait, grass that's not just there. Like, you know what I mean?
So the whole concept of like the suburbs that you and I grew up in is a really new kind of thing. Like smaller towns that have been around forever, that's a little bit different. Like you look at a town like New Hope or Manville, that's a bit different. But I grew up in Hillsborough. And if you look at a town like Piscataway, that's kind of an experimental area is how I look at it now, because that's only been like when my grandparents moved to Hillsborough, there were 1,000 people living there. That's like nobody.
Now, what about farming though? You do need farms in a more suburban area, right?
That should just be farmland, I think.
Okay, is that what you're saying? Like nobody should be, okay. I
think it should just be farmland and people should live closer to each other.
Gotcha. I got it.
But wait, here's the issue I wanted to get to is the issue with that, as I've come to understand, is did you grow up with a septic tank?
I don't know. I actually don't know.
You grew up in Boundbrook, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you did not.
Okay.
You had city plumbing. There were pipes that went under your house and took the sewage into, gave you water and took the sewage into a water treatment plant.
Okay.
If you live in a city like Philadelphia, or even I think probably Boundbrook is probably fine too, where it's all gridded and it's a small area, it's manageable to do that. In a town where I grew up in, which is like 50 square miles, which is like the size of Staten Island, those winding pipes have so much farther to travel. It's a lot harder. So everything has a life span. What happens when those miles and miles of pipes eventually fail, which everything does, it's going to be absurdly expensive to replace. And most people, I'm getting way too technical, I think.
No, you're good. I'm following,
when that does fail, it's going to be so much more expensive than to fix it in Philly, because you'll have to drive all the way. You're going to have to drive more miles to serve less people. For example, you have about, 40 neighbors just on your side of the street right here. They're all paying property taxes. They're all contributing to that sewage. Multiply that by, in Hillsborough, where there's 30 feet between each house, that same plot of land will have 4 houses. So 4 versus 40, you're getting like a tenth of the money to pay for those services. It just doesn't make sense.
It's funny. We were just talking about conservation of energy heat-wise. So right now I'm living in Philadelphia in a row house. Mm-hmm. It's like a townhouse row house. It's like I don't know. To me, it's like a long, skinny apartment. It feels like. It's right now I have my heat set to 60 and the thing reads about 69 degrees. So what he was explaining to me is because of the houses being closer together and being made of brick, anybody in this building, like, because it's like a large building of row houses, kind of maybe like 6 or 7 or 8 row houses all in one building, if they have their heat on, that actually heats up the entire building, so you don't even need to use as much energy. So there's other things like that living in a city would contribute to less energy usage. There are all kinds of benefits.
I think that, like, if someone, I'll try and temper what I said before. If someone wants to, like, live by themselves and not have any neighbors, maybe for sound reasons or any other reason that they want to, that's fine. And I do not think that those towns are built to have city-like services like grid plumbing and electric and gas, though. And if you're going to live in the country, live in the country. Kind of like live in a cabin, or live like how people lived in Hillsborough before 1970, where you had a septic, and which is just like, just to explain what that is. That's like a giant vat or tank that you put all of your waste into, and then someone comes and cleans it. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. And they have well water, and there's all different things, and there are still some people in like that town that do that, but like most towns, these sprawling suburbs have city-like services now, and my mind is boggled at how outside of, like, you can take out debt forever, I guess, but like it's weird. I feel like I've gotten way too technical on your show.
No, not at all.
Okay.
I have a quick question, because I know you study history as well. I didn't realize that some historical time periods had advanced civilizations. Like, did the Romans have a plumbing system?
Yes.
Is that right? Well, how did they do it? What did they do? So
they had this thing called aqueducts. I am not extremely versed in how it works, but it's very for the time, it's much more similar to modern plumbing than what was had for the next 1,000 years. They dump. Someone should look that up. I don't want.
Yeah, I don't have a fact checker, but I do know they had plumbing. Like, I never knew that until, and again, another thing I learned this year. I'm like, that's crazy. That's wild to me.
Well, it's wild because where did it go?
Right. Yeah.
Like, how did people decide, you know what? Yeah, I don't like this. We're gonna shit outdoors again. We're gonna throw it in a bucket and dump it out on the street. That was the choice that was made by society. But it's more complicated. We're kind of getting there
in our society too. I've seen some human fecal matter on the streets here. Okay, now we're gonna get into some questions that I have listed here about history. Okay, this is a very odd transition, but the first question is a historical question. I only have about 2 or 3 history questions on here. The first one, I go through these weird, like, YouTube obsessions where I watch one video and the algorithm keeps sending me the same topic, and I'll probably go through this phase for another 2 or 3 months till I get into a new phase. But the phase I'm going through now is police interrogation videos. For some reason, I'm super into it. So I don't know a lot about American 20th century history, so I looked at a huge list of issues like from that time, from that time frame. And one of the things that came up was the Watergate scandal.
Okay.
And I feel like that kind of goes hand in hand with my obsession now, because it's like there was something with like a robbery, like it was a whole thing. So can you, you also teach history as well. So if I were your brand new student and I'm like, what's Watergate? Explain it to me, because that's exactly what's happening. I have no idea what it is. All I know is that there was a robbery involved and I'm interested in.
The Watergate is the most famous American scandal, I would say, certainly of the 20th century. It's to the point now where any sort of scandal is given the suffix gate.
Okay. Pizzagate. I was just thinking that.
Yeah. So it's funny is that's so much less famous. In 10 years, no one's even going to know what that is. But
the Pizzagate in the history books, the
yeah.
21st century, the Pizzagate.
It's probably going to be another Pizzagate. Like I could see Pizzagate is wasted than what Pizzagate actually is. Yeah. There should be a much better Pizzagate scandal. Yeah. Okay, so Watergate is a hotel in Washington, D.C. There are two major parts. What age should I explain this to? Let's say, like you said, you're one of my students. How should I?
Me now. Like
okay.
I'm a college.
Yeah, you're college educated.
I'm a college educated woman who's just taking part-time history lessons from you, because I was smoking weed in high school and didn't pay attention. So I'm like, explain to me the Watergate.
I'd probably still start at the basics, because I don't want anyone to miss anything. But okay, so I'm gonna explain to someone younger than you. Okay. Or just less than 5. It doesn't matter. There are two major parties in the United States electoral system: the Republicans and the Democrats.
Right.
In 1973, one. The scandal lasted. The scandal is the kind of interesting. So there was we were heading for the election year. The Republican president at the time was Richard Nixon, who was elected in the election of 1968. So the Watergate break-in occurred during 1972, during the following election year.
Okay.
The Democratic Party, big D, capital D, Democratic, was headquartered in the Watergate building, as I understand it, in the Watergate Hotel. And Nixon hired a group of criminals who were employed by the White House already. So he sent advisors in there to break into the hotel and steal Democratic secrets to help him win the election.
Okay, so, but it wasn't like a staged burglary? It was like an actual thing?
No, like they broke in. They broke
okay.
into there. And there was a night. What, did you ever see Forrest Gump?
Yes.
Okay, they do a scene about the Watergate in that. But someone saw that there was a light on in the Watergate Hotel.
Okay.
And they sent over security. Security caught them, and then suddenly it came out over the next year. So Nixon ended up winning the election of 1972.
Okay.
But by 1973, he was implicated in the Watergate burglary and cover-up, which was the much more egregious crime. So stealing is obviously illegal and wrong.
Yeah.
When the president orders you to do it, that's much worse.
Was he the first president to like actually resign by himself? Is that right?
Nixon is the only president to ever resign. Yeah. To my knowledge. Yeah, he's the only president to ever resign.
I don't even know what he looked like. Was he hot?
You don't know what?
Was he hot?
Nixon?
Yeah, what did he look like?
Kind of like. That's what he. No. He
was not hot.
Not even a little bit.
JFK was. He was.
JFK. Yeah. No. We. Yeah. Ran real downhill after JFK.
Okay. So he's not. Yeah. He doesn't look like JFK.
Not even a little.
I don't even know what he looks like.
No, he's got a very angular, long nose, a very large forehead, sunken in eyes.
All right. Yeah. That's
bushy eyebrows.
No, that's good.
Did I say long forehead?
Yeah. The only thing I kind of like is the angular nose, but everything else is
thinning hair. No, this is like it's a very flat, long nose. Yeah. It's very unique. He's a very unique looking man.
Character.
Yeah. Nixon. So they always say it's not the crime, it's the cover up, and that's what got Nixon in trouble. So it got traced back to his chief of staff, who had to resign then. And it just kind of kept going up the ladder. Is suddenly people realized, oh wait, this person worked from the White House. Oh, this other burglar worked in the White House. This other burglar. Yeah. They all he called them the White House plumbers. Was
plumbers.
Because they were there
full circle.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So the White House plumbers were there to put out leaks. So they were hired by the aptly named CREEP, or Committee to Re-elect the President. And then, it just kept getting more and more, especially the work of investigating, more and more facts came to light, in part due to the investigative journalists Bob Woodward and Carl Bernstein. There's a great book and movie called The President's Men, all about their efforts. And there was an informant, this guy named Mark, I can't remember his name right now, but there was an FBI informant who then tipped them off that it was the president. He used the cover name Deep Throat, which is very funny now. But his name is Mark something. I can't remember off the top of my head. It just went all the way up to the president, and he was probably going to have to be impeached.
Right.
Congress had turned against him, and they would have impeached him, except that he resigned. So he resigned before he could have been impeached. And it just like he
they call that quired, quit before you get fired.
Yeah. Quired.
I've done that before.
Nixon quired hard.
Not for anything that intense, but I've quired a few jobs before.
Oh yeah, it's this whole big famous thing. I mean, he did everything he could to try and save his job. He fired everyone he possibly could fire. He fired the person investigating him.
And just to be clear, like, I don't know much. All of this is proven. Like, none of this is conspiracy.
No,
this
not
is
even
all,
a little bit.
Okay,
not even a little bit. So this is all. I mean, this is 1973 when he had. So all of this is on TV.
Yeah.
So then Nixon, what he had to do. Well, here's even the best part is Nixon. The vice president, Spiro Agnew, would have become president, but he had already resigned in disgrace due to a scandal.
Right.
Nixon administration was very dirty.
Wow.
So the Speaker of the House, Gerald Ford, took office. He is, I believe, the only president to have never won an election.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Other people have, so if other vice presidents have taken office when the president dies, for example, all of them then won their subsequent election. Like after
so there's no conspiracy. Like if they don't win, like this is no conspiracy. Like this is there's
no conspiracy. Yeah. So, but here's the problem: is Gerald Ford pardoned Nixon. So Nixon was probably going to go to jail. Yeah. But the president can pardon. In the same way a governor can pardon a man on death row, the president can pardon anyone they want to, except themselves. Donald Trump tried to pardon himself, which he was unable to do so because he can't pardon yourself. Yeah. So Nixon got away with it, essentially. He had to live the rest of his life in some level of disgrace and humiliation.
But he never went to jail.
He never went to jail.
Wow.
He did have to. He's the only person to resign publicly on TV for being president, or privately for that matter. Yeah. He died in Manhattan. In this, I think, in the hospital I was born in, but years before I was born.
All in the name of just winning the election. And I kind of, this is a whole nother conversation, so we might not get into it. I kind of wonder if all of that was more in name of pride, like he just wanted to be proud and win the election, or if there was like some more bigger political things going on why he wanted to win the election, you know?
Well, being president of the United States is kind of the end goal for any politician in this country.
Pride. It's probably like mostly pride, you know?
Yeah. Why do people go into politics? A lot of it has to do with pride, and I think wanting... It's a power thing, but I think a lot of it is I think it's not too dissimilar from why people go on any stage. I think you're searching for some type of acceptance.
Yeah. We're musicians.
Yeah. I've heard someone say once that politics is just show business for ugly people. Nixon would definitely fit that.
Sorry, Dad, if you're listening, because my dad was in politics. No, that made the show business for ugly people. Yeah, no, JFK, he was a good one, and there might have been a few good ones, but yeah, that's actually a good point. I like that though. Okay, so
sometimes show business people, they do really well in politics, like Schwarzenegger, like they win elections. Trump
wasn't Trump. He was wasn't he a TV? Yeah, he was like literally in show business. And
that's his whole thing.
That's crazy.
The Apprentice.
After that, I think after Trump became president, after like a TV show, like he did roast battles. Like I've done roast battles. Like
he got roasted by the situation.
Yeah. So like if after somebody like that became president, not like I will not be surprised by anything going like Kanye West could be president and I wouldn't be shocked. I'd be like, yeah, that makes perfect sense. Okay.
We are so screwed.
Next question. Transitioning into more topics from 20th century American history. Okay, I actually think this is important because I hear a lot of people saying that we could go into another recession. So the Great Depression, I know that was a huge piece of this era of history. Again, I'm your student. Explain to me I know what the Great Depression was, but explain to me what was the catalyst for it. And then furthermore, explain to me if we're having any modern day, like, trickling effects from it still.
Yes. And yes.
Okay.
So the Great Depression, everything. You could ask me, are we still having trickle down effects from the fall of the Roman Empire? And I would say,
and it's all connected.
I think
right?
Everything is.
Okay.
Yeah. It depends how far back you want to go. So the Great Depression was a worldwide phenomenon. People, I think Americans in particular, tend to have an isolationist view and think that everything is about us, but it's not. It was a worldwide thing. I remember telling a student, some dumbass asked me like, oh yeah, well it's Biden's fault for the inflation, right? And I was like, okay, then why does Germany have inflation right now? Like, people don't realize we're all connected. It's
not one particular person's
fault. It's not one particular person's fault. Definitely not that guy's fault for that. But so the Great Depression began in the late 1920s. People often point to two events. People often point to the stock market crash in 1929. Black Tuesday is the day if you want to Google it. How did the stock market crash? The word is speculation. People are often quick to say, oh, that didn't cause the Great Depression. I find that dubious. I think it did. People just don't want to give the stock market a bad name, but the stock market crash absolutely contributed fiercely to the Great Depression. So speculation is when you're observing and making guesses about something. In this case, a financial market. What happened is at this time you could purchase stocks of companies or shares of companies on credit. Meaning you could essentially use a credit card to buy a piece of a company and that you would own the share of that company, whether it's 5% of Coca-Cola or...
And it was like a gamble, essentially.
Well, yeah, stock market.
It was like Bitcoin of their day.
Essentially, yeah. No, that's it. But as Bitcoin is, it's a gamble because it's volatile. It's not a fixed price. Let's say you bought $10 worth of Coca-Cola, and then tomorrow it's worth $5. Well, you lost $5. If it's worth... if you sold it, you would have $5 back. Okay. If you bought $10 and went to $15, great. You made $5 when you sell it. Yeah. But what if you borrowed money, meaning used credit cards? If you borrowed money to buy that, and now let's say it goes from 10 to 5, and now the bank says, hey, I want my $10 back. Yeah. You don't have that money to give them. You have to default on your loan. What if everyone does that?
I mean, isn't that kind of like this? I'm surprised the student loans didn't put us in... I mean, they keep saying we're about to go into a recession, so maybe they did. But that's kind of, to me, that sounds like student loans, because it's kind of like so many students were like, "Hey, let's take out this debt to go to college," and a lot of them graduate and were like, "Oh, I'm not making that much money to pay it back."
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, the difference is that I guess stocks, their value can change. Yeah. But an education is not something you could ever sell, so it's, I guess, worthless in that. It's monetarily worthless. I have
a stand-up bit.
Societally, it's the best thing ever. But
I have a stand-up bit where I talk about like going to college. I can't remember. It's been a while since I said it, so I can't remember what it was. But it was something like how useless my education was, and I think I say something on the stage like. I had a very useless educational track. I went to college as a double major in Spanish and music, and now I can play piano, speak Spanish, and owe the government $100,000. like something like, I don't remember how I phrase it, but it's like something like that. And that usually gets a laugh because it's like really like points out like, yeah, like that's what I have now. Like I can just, sing La Bamba at a dive bar and like owe the government a lot of money.
I love it. Yeah.
But anyways, okay. And then you already answered this. Like you think that, yes, it still has effects today because everything.
Yes.
Is there anything in particular you could point at? Like here's evidence of it having an effect today?
Yeah. I just want to tie a bow on the Great Depression thing. I was saying.
Sure.
So you're buying something on credit, you then have to pay that money back. If you can't pay that money back, the bank loses out on that $5 that they lent you. You pay them the other $5. Now you're broke. They have their money, they have half their money. If everyone does that, then the bank goes out of business.
Okay.
I am no friend to banks or sympathy. I have no sympathy towards banks, except that people store their money in banks. And people don't realize this, I think. But, Andrea, do you know that the banks give, like, let's say you put $100 into a bank, they give that money, and that's how they give loans to people. That is the money. As long as they keep enough money where I think it's 10% is what they have to keep. So let's say you went and you're like, oh, I want to take out my $100. And as long as they had enough money to do that, they would let you have that money. But what if they didn't? They've spent your money.
So in theory, your money in the bank could technically disappear.
Yeah. In actuality, in 1930.
It did.
Yes. All across the country. Banks failed. Because people... So now, like, you can't buy stocks with credit cards anymore. That was one law that we still feel today because you can't buy something so volatile with other people's money, essentially. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
You can't borrow money to buy stocks. There were a lot of banking reform laws that FDR put into place, and a lot of them have been repealed and kind of caused the recession, actually. Glass-Steagall. The Glass-Steagall Act was repealed in 1999 by Bill Clinton, and that essentially said that you could either be a savings and loan bank or an investment bank, but not both. And the consolidation of different types of banks really caused the financial panic of 2008, 2007. And to what you said before that we're heading for a recession, I don't know that recession in 2007 ever really ended. I don't think it did. That's my personal belief. I think the 2008 recession never ended. We've just all adapted.
Right.
I think we're all just used to living with less money
and
slightly worse lives.
Right. Yeah. Right. Yeah. No, that checks out. I actually specifically remember that time of my life. Mm-hmm. I was a waitress. I was like 19, 20, something like that. I was a waitress at Applebee's, and I ended up getting promoted to bartender. And when I first started working that job as a Applebee's bartender, that place was like a fucking nightclub. Like there were people, it was so popular. People were coming in. I was 20 something years old, and sometimes I'd walk home with $600 cash.
Amazing.
It was almost abruptly. It felt like overnight. I remember suddenly, like one year, it was pretty quick transition where I went from that making like $600 on a Wednesday night too. Saturdays were even better. And then suddenly I was walking home with like $50 a night. Nobody was going to Applebee's anymore.
Yeah.
The money's going, I mean, someone's spending money somewhere, I'll say that, but they weren't doing it at Applebee's. The people, the class of people who loved Applebee's could no longer afford Applebee's. And that was right around the recession. So
I would say that's the first thing people cut out is eating out.
Is Applebee's.
Yeah, Applebee's is probably the first place you would
it's
cut
still in
when
business,
your money's
though.
tight.
Applebee's is still in business.
Yeah.
There's one right around here in Fishtown.
America's friendly neighborhood bar, right?
Yeah. Their food is disgusting. Yeah. Sorry, Applebee's. I should probably cut that out. Okay, so I have one more history question, and then I have a few music questions for you. Okay, this one's more, I guess, getting philosophical. How has studying history changed the way you think and view the world?
I give very long answers to every question. I think that it makes me view the world very cyclically.
Kind of like you were saying, it's like all...
Everything just happens again and again, but everything goes back to something. I'd like to think I'm a bit more open-minded. Just being a teacher and like a student of the world, I like to think I'm more empathetic the more I learn about people. And that's all history is. It's a study of different people. And usually famous world leaders, but like just study of people and their choices that they made. And I think there's an easy way to learn something and a hard way to learn something. It's a lot better. I think the hard way to learn something is to go through the struggle yourself. The easy way is to watch someone close to you go through the struggle. And I think that's the much better way to learn things. And that's what history provides is you can watch. Let's look at like Napoleon. Okay. Napoleon tried to invade Russia. Didn't work because no one can invade Russia in the winter. If other countries had followed that lesson and been students of history, they would have learned, oh, you can't invade Russia in the winter. But everyone chooses to make that mistake the hard way. To learn that mistake the hard way. I think history is chock full of things like that, and a lot of it is, I think, applicable to our life. It's just stories of life stories. I like a lot of the little history things too. A lot of the day-to-day stuff is really, I think a lot of it's really funny. A lot of it's really tragic and sad, though. Probably most of it's tragic and sad, but
Yeah, okay, that's great. No, that's a good answer. Okay, transitioning into music. My first question for you, I asked this to another musician, but I actually really like this question because it's like good for me to hear, because I'm going to be picking one of my originals to record soon. Looking back at all the recordings you've done as a musician, and just to explain, I said this in the beginning of the podcast, but in case I make like a clip segment out of this, just to explain, he is lead singer, songwriter, creator of the band Feeny. It's a pop punk band that originated in New Jersey. Now he's living in Philadelphia, so he does New Jersey and Philadelphia area type shows. He's recorded a couple EPs and singles, that type of thing. Or do you have a full album as well, right?
A full-length album.
Yeah, so he has a history of recording, like he has some experience. Looking back at all the recordings you've done, going back to your first professional recording, what was one thing you wish you had done differently, or like you learned after that you wanted to change for your next recording?
Yeah, every opportunity I get to record is a beautiful learning experience, sometimes painful again, but I think it's cliche, but practice. And I think
that's what the other guy said too.
Yeah. We get to the point now where, with Feeny, we record the album about 3 times now, 3 at least. There's so many different ways to practice. People think you practice your songs and that's good enough. First off, you should practice your songs with a metronome. That's the next step. We practice recording. Like, we have mics and we record the album ourselves and mix it and do every single bit of it as best as we possibly can. We even master it ourselves. Then we go into studio and do it with someone else who's a little bit better than us, but we are not recording things for the first time or even the second, or usually it's the third or fourth time when we go into the studio for real.
That's actually such a good point, because I remember in college, going back to college, I was a piano major. I studied classical piano, and we would do these big performances, but we had a class that was practice performance class, and it was exactly what you said. We practice piano, but practicing piano is a very solo thing. It's after a while, it feels kind of easy. Yes. You don't really practice performing, like, so if you just practice piano and then you go out on stage, like a lot of times you like lock up, freeze up, make all these mistakes because you're just not used to the environment. So we had this class called piano rep, and every week we would meet and all play for each other. So it was like a practice performance, and that it was to prepare you for the real performance. I also interviewed a cage fighter, a professional cage fighter, and she said the same exact thing. She said that they don't just do like the whole big cage fight on TV for the first time. They train, they practice in a small studio, then they practice the performance end of cage fighting, and then they practice. So I never even thought to do that for like recording albums. Like, I never thought to apply that to recording albums, but that makes so much sense. Like, it's such a weird environment to record, so you might as well like practice it at home. That's really good.
You have to practice every bit of it, because you may be used to playing guitar, but or piano, or singing a song in your room, but then there's doing it with the other members of the project,
like a person you don't know, like high tense situations.
Just the more you do it, the better it's going to be. And the other thing is, I think maybe don't be so attached to each album,
the outcome.
Yeah, I don't let perfection become the enemy of the good. Like, I think that's the expression. But I think that a lot of musicians, particularly now, since so many of us record our own work, will spend a nauseatingly long time getting the perfect tone or take, and months or days become weeks, become months, become years. After a certain point, maybe that one wasn't going to be your perfect record, but the next one could be. And you can always re-record things. Like, people don't realize that, just how many bands have actually re-recorded older songs or bigger hits. If the people like the song, just give it a re-recording and put it out again. If you really believe in that one song that much, try again later. But like, I think people think that, like, and I'm speaking from experience, oh my gosh, this is going to be my Let It Be. This is going to be my Here Comes the Sun. I need to get this perfect right now. And you spend a year working on it, and then no one ever hears it. No, it's not going to be here.
And not only that, but what if you really listen to Here Comes the Sun? That shit's not perfect either. Like you hear little flaws in those types of things.
No, it's not technically perfect at all.
Yeah.
It's there's a magic in there. Like, I think that might be a perfect song. But like
that, I don't mean like from an artistic perspective. I mean from a recording perspective. Sometimes I'll listen to some Beatles songs. Like, I remember when he and I used to play in a band together. We were listening to, I don't remember if it was Twist and Shout, or I think it was La Bamba. La Bamba's a great fucking song. Everybody loves it. But there was one, we caught it where he like started too late by accident.
He came in late. Yeah.
He came in late. And like, we're like, wait, I never noticed that. Like, so that's what I mean. Like, even the perfect songs aren't perfect either. Like, there's a magic to them that goes beyond technical perfection.
Yeah. And musicians care too much about technical perfection, I think.
I can get like that. I'm not gonna lie. Sometimes I get that way.
I get that way too. And tones, guitarists with their tones, and I'm a guitarist, but I kind of gave up on tones. I didn't give up, but like, the engineer will tell me what's. I don't know. I don't care anymore.
You like release total control.
Yeah, no, that's the other thing, is you have to let go when you're in that room. If you're, you hired somebody because you like their ear, then listen to what their ear tells you. Know what your lane is. If you're working with other people, let them do their job. If you're the songwriter, focus on the song, maybe not the sound as much. I mean, this is different for everybody, though.
Yeah. No, right. Okay, next. What are some of the biggest challenges about being a working musician? And there's a lot, like, because I also am a working musician, and it can be really challenging. So you don't have to name every single one, but any that you care to share.
Commitment has been the largest hurdle in my professional life, I'd say, due to, I guess money is always the thing, but like, they're intertwined. I think that you're constantly butting up against different goals and ambitions, and with people. You and I have had, we've had bands with each other where we've had
different goals. Yeah.
Well, from each other, but I meant we've had different goals from other. We've had members. We talked about this in many different bands where they'll like suddenly flake out on the gig and just be like,
right, yeah.
And that's frustrating. But you have to keep in mind, everyone, because this job doesn't have a paycheck that's going to come every week.
Yeah.
You're gonna, like, you don't have just that set salary to sit back on, because it's a hustle. A lot of people want to just look at it as a hobby, and that's totally acceptable for many people.
Yeah.
And I used to think that, like, that was it is a negative in a lot of aspects, but like, yeah, you're working with who you're working with. A lot of times I feel like there's a trade-off. Sometimes those people who do look at it as a hobby sometimes are better musicians and more stable people in general, because they haven't, I don't know, that's just something I've noticed, is sometimes the guy who throws himself carelessly into this life, and I saw that more in my younger 20s, but might not be able to do, they might just be more sporadic and they'll throw themselves into something else also. I think that, but you're also not going to be able to, I don't know, commitment. Everyone has different commitment goals, and those goals may change, and those desires and drives change for a lot everybody, I guess, as you age and as a project ages. So it's just really hard to balance each other's wants and needs and schedules, and I think just differing ambitions and desires has been my biggest frustrating point since my teenage years through now.
Yeah. Just to clarify, like what he said in the beginning, when he said commitment, he means like the commitment levels of the different bandmates. Like, I don't think it with yourself. Like the way you said, not about yourself. Yeah. Like, you're a very committed, like you seem to be very committed, but you mean like just the differing levels of commitments.
Like, people could be extremely committed and gosh, like there's different things. And I think being, we're adult working musicians. So there is you want to be in a band with people roughly your age. It's just
Yeah.
something I've noticed. You get along better, it's a better hang. And people roughly our age have different lives and lifestyles a lot of the time than they did than they did years ago. And a lot of that means there's a smaller pool of musicians to choose from.
So I'll be honest, like this is gonna sound harsh to like maybe the listeners. These days I'm really strict about who I let in my band.
Yeah.
This is gonna sound something sexist, ageist, one of the ists, not one of those, but lifestyle-ist. This is gonna be lifestyle-ist. I won't hire people with a family.
I was about to say, you're going to say no kids. I knew. We've never talked about this, but no kids. I knew that was coming.
I know that's something-ist, but I just, like, I don't have any room for it. Like, not for the families. I don't have any room for people who haven't chosen this over their family. Not over their family, but, like, either you have a family that's super supportive and lets you have your freedom here, or you don't have a family at all. Because like if you're going to join my band, you have to be committed. So like Tristan, like everybody in the band right now is committed. We're currently looking for a bass player who has that same thing. We did find a bass player. Right now it's up in the air about his commitment levels because he's new. From my understanding, he is committed to music, but he's super talented, so he's in like 6 or 7 different projects. That's another thing. If you find somebody talented, everybody wants them.
We're playing with a smaller pool in our 30s. There's just less people, and everyone who's good gets, when we were in a band together, when we each in like I was in like 3 bands at that time. I'm still in a few bands. You're a few bands. Like that's just how it is. You're constantly, because there's less of us, and
the
business we've chosen.
I don't I don't picture like me or my drummer or my guitar player like getting married and have kids anytime soon. I don't picture that for either of us. So right now it's just the bass player that we're trying to like see like, okay, is he a good fit for us? He literally is brand new. We just joined him like yesterday. Nice. He did a tryout and we liked him at the tryout, and we just like talked about it and we're like, let's give him a try and see if he can make performances. But I'm like I'm super strict with that. I don't if you're like the guy who's like, like, no, you're coming to rehearsals, you're doing everything with us, you're coming to as many gigs as possible, and if you flake out, I'm firing you and finding a new person. Like that's how I am these days. But I do understand the frustration that it's like it's not that easy to just replace somebody at the same time.
It's not. I mean,
did you ever consider hiring a young person, like a young person into the band who's dedicated?
Yeah, I thought about that all the time.
Because then they might be more like into it.
I'm thinking right now. I mean, I've thought about joining bands with like 3 20-year-olds and stuff, and that like a suburban 20 doesn't even have to be a city 20.
Suburban 20. Yeah. I mean, you look young, like you're in shape, so you could pull it off. So I
could just tell them I'm 19. Why not? Just go vegan, people. Never age.
Hey. Now people listen here. I eat meat and people tell me I look young too.
You look
so
very young,
I don't know if it's just the veganism. I think it's just taking care of yourself, like being some sort of health conscious or awareness.
I kid. Do whatever you want. Just be aware.
Yeah. Just like don't eat garbage. Unless you got a great metabolism.
Yeah, or unless, it's, organic garbage.
Yeah, unless it's organic garbage. That's a funny thing. I was thinking that, like, I'm getting sidetracked. I was thinking about the word organic. Organic doesn't necessarily mean good for you. It just means doesn't have chemicals. Like, you can have organic feces, like, and it's still organic if there's no, like, toxins.
Yeah, I guess organic garbage would be compost.
Yeah. I guess organic. Okay. Okay, one more question about music. As a musician in your songwriting, when you approach songwriting, do you feel a certain obligation to create music that has a positive effect on society in some kind of way? Or are you kind of like, I want to make music that changes the people and like has a positive societal effect in the messages? Or are you like, fuck that shit, I'm strictly about what sounds good? Like, or neither? Like,
I think on some level I'd like to think everything I do contributes to society in a positive way.
Okay.
In my art form, I don't think I necessarily have to be overt in my messaging.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think I have to have a song that's like, eat your veggies, do your chores, do your recycling, don't drive cars. But I don't think I could feel good if I am who I am, and I write songs that, adhere to my values. So anything I put out, whether it's good for society or anything I put out, I'll inherently think is good for society because it's something I've created. If, let's say, I had a co-author in a song and I didn't, and they said, don't eat veggies, don't do your whatever. If they say, treat your partner like crap or something in a song, or they used a language I didn't like, I would not stand by that. So I think that everything we put out, it has to adhere to my values first and foremost.
Okay, yes. I guess a different way to phrase this, because like where I'm kind of going with this is that some people will argue the perfect example is the WAP song. Remember the wet ass pussy song? Yes. It like made this whole.
Is it Cardi B? And Megan Thee Stallion, I
think it was Cardi B. I don't remember who it was exactly.
Cardi B and Megan Thee Stallion.
But it was
that song.
Yeah, yes. So it was the wet ass pussy song, the WAP song, and I remember it being a political divided thing where some people were like, I don't want to generalize, but I feel like mainly the right was like, that's garbage, that's bad for society, and the left was like, that's freeing. Like, as a musician, do you feel like a song like that is inappropriate, or are you like, no, creative freedom, it sounds good, it's fun, who cares what it's about? Like, how do you, like, what's your take on those? You don't even have to comment specifically on that song, but like songs like that, music like that.
I don't know, that song's fine. It sounds good. Like, that's no different than like Sir Mix-a-Lot's Baby Got Back.
Yeah, like, so my thing with music is I think music is just an expression of any part of society, and I don't think it should be taken that seriously. Like there is a community of people somewhere in the world that are like Baby Got Back, like, and they want to celebrate that. Great. So like the way I look at music,
it's a good song. I like this. I like both songs.
Like, I don't look at music like it's affecting society. I look at it as it's like society just coming out through music. Like it's just already existing society.
We're all society. Yeah. We are members of it. If you're in the city, you're more of a member of society, and you're more of a community.
If you're in the suburbs,
you're kind of you're out there. We both grew up in the suburbs.
I guess what I'm saying is, if it's like a chicken or the egg thing, like what came first? I think the society came first, then the music came after. I don't think the music affected it. I think is what I'm saying. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's symbiotic. It happens together at the same time. Yeah. Everything is both. There's a Newton law about this. I think it's Newton's second or third law. Forgive me, engineers and physicists, but it's his second or third law. Every action must have an equal and opposite reaction. So, you have WAP comes out. Someone is going to at the same time put out an equal reaction to that. So you're going to have people that say, I'm going to make an even crazier song.
Right.
And then let's say, okay, Baby Got Back comes out. Someone's going to be like, all right, I want to put an even crazier song out. Then WAP is the reaction to that. And then someone's like, or unconsciously puts out the opposite reaction to Baby Got Back, which would be like Elliott Smith or
right.
Yeah, someone just being like, all right, I'm going to do a really sad song, very different, lo-fi. I think that there's maybe I misunderstand what you mean about society. I think
I might have not phrased the question correctly. I mean, like,
music affects our culture. Absolutely, I do believe that. Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
But music is affected by the culture at the same time. It's all.
That's what I'm saying. Like I like when it goes to like the WAP song, or like that's just one specific example. But there's like this argument about what music.
When you first said that, I was like, Jesus, Andrea, you're Italian. What are you doing here?
I think what I'm trying to say is people got all like hung up about that song. Like, that's going to affect the kids. And I'm like, no, the kids were already that way. And that's why the music came out. Because it was a reflection of what already existed.
Yeah. Art is
that makes sense.
Art is a reflection of us. Art's our reflection. But then we also reflect art, though.
It's cyclical. It's cyclical. Yeah.
It really does. Like,
Yeah, like, so the kids were already Baby Got Back. Then they created Baby Got Back, but then Baby Got Back made more.
But then Baby Got Back. And Baby got WAP.
And then Baby Got Back gave back to society. And then society got even more Baby Got Back. And then those people created the thong song. Like, so I get it.
Exactly, yeah.
So I get it. It's both. It's a two-way street. Okay.
And for every thong song, at the same time, like, Tom Waits is still out there croaking out new hits or new non-hits.
Which is it's a chemical reaction because he was like, I can't stand the music these days. I'm going to create something raw and meaningful. And then he creates like it's all just like chemical reactions, cyclical, historical. Yeah, I get it.
I'm going to clip the mic there.
Okay.
Probably did.
Okay. All right. I actually only have one question left, but we've been going for almost an hour, so that's perfect timing.
We're just getting in the stride now.
I know, right?
Yeah.
What time is it? No, I mean, we've been going like 55 minutes, 60 minutes. Okay. It's funny. I was going to ask this question. I originally saved this question for last because it's intense, but then you said something in the very beginning of the podcast that I'm like, oh, this would be a perfect segue into this question. But then I was like, no, let me just save it for the end. Right. So in the very beginning, when we were talking about city lives, you said something about cars.
Yes.
You were talking about why they can have a negative impact on society. And you're saying because some people poor people were taken advantage of in this situation. Like people had to move out. So actually my last question for you is, we're getting philosophical with this one. I'm afraid to even ask the question because it sounds like a messed up question to even ask, but I'm asking it because it's not because I agree with what I'm asking. I'm asking because I'm afraid of like what is possible.
Ooh, I love this.
So do you think it's possible to live the life we live today, like with what we have this keyboard, this house, we were talking about like everything we have cars, we have technology. Is it possible at all to live the life we live today without there being some class of people that suffers as a consequence of what we have today?